welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we review horror movies and turn them into drinking games. We are your two hosts. I'm Tucker.
And I'm Alex. Today we will be making a drinking game for Sinister 2, directed by Ciaran, who is also the director for the movie Eli. Sinister 2 is also written by the same people as the first movie, Robert C. Cargill and Scott Derrickson. They were both the writers for movies such as Doctor Strange and The Black Phone.
As the first movie followed around the Oswald family, this movie follows the deputy that was helping Ellison with his investigation. His investigation on Bagul leads him to a farmhouse that he thought was abandoned, but is home to Courtney and her two kids, Dylan and Zach. One of the brothers, Dylan, starts to have constant nightmares in the house. The children that Bagul took tell him that the only way they go away is for Dylan to watch all of their home movies.
Just a fair warning, there are spoilers ahead, so if you have not yet watched Sinister 2 or the first installment, we recommend you watch those films before viewing the rest of the video. For Sinister 2, we will post the drinking rules on screen now and ask that you come back when you're done watching. With that out of the way, let's move on to the drinking rules.
So our first drinking rule, as always, is death. Whenever you see one, take a sip. And this movie resulted in an astounding 26 deaths.
Yes. I'd say that's mainly because of all the films showing basically 3 to 5 deaths.
Yeah.
And there was 6 of them. If you want to count also the beginning scene, I think we included those 3 there because you saw them on the little crosses in the cornfield just burning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen a movie with this many deaths. I can't even remember the last time we've seen it in the 20s.
I have no idea. It's been a while for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Moving on to the next rule is whenever somebody screams, cries, or yells, you take a sip. And in this movie, it came to a total of 13.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising it's on the lower end considering how many deaths there are. Usually with death comes screaming in a lot of cases, but not for this movie. It's literally halved.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on to rule number 3, it's whenever a jump scare occurs, and this happened 12 times in the movie.
So you can say that some of these were effective, but I do not think that they were nearly as good as the first movie, to say the least.
I would agree with you.
So there's not much else to say about jump scares, so let's move on to the fourth rule, which is whenever Bagul media is seen or heard, you take a sip. And this came to a total of 9 sips.
Yeah, I'd say the home movies are kind of one of the best selling points of the film, honestly, or this the Sinister franchise as a whole. I don't know, I just always like seeing the creative deaths, really.
I completely agree with you. I think they're the most creative part in the movie. They're the part that everybody looks forward to the most in both this installment, just because they were set up so well in the first one. So it's the thing that everyone's kind of looking forward to, and I think they did all right. Some of them were a little bit over the top, but I think some of them were also a lot better done, in my opinion anyways.
Yeah. Anyways, after all that, we'll move on to rule number 5, which is whenever you see Bagul, and this happened 12 times.
So this happens a lot in the first movie too, where Bagul just randomly pops up.
Yeah.
It's very cliche jump scares.
Yeah.
As I'd say like some 1910s horror movies are.
Oh yeah.
Like I'd say that like kind of teenage jump scare type of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Recommended for a teenage audience.
And not to mention that this happened 12 times as well as jump scares happened 12 times. So it's kind of a coincidence. I don't know. It is mostly when you see them with the jump scares.
Moving on to the next rule is whenever you see the Bagul symbol, and this came to a total of 7 sips.
Yeah, it's not seen super often, and it can kind of be hard to see at times, or hard to pay attention to, because it kind of happens in the background a lot, or, it's just hard to spot sometimes. So bear that in mind, you might end up with a different number. But moving on to rule number 7, it's whenever Zach is mean to Dylan, and this happens 6 times.
Yep, it shows the character dynamic between the two brothers, how Zach is a bad brother, always trying to one-up Dylan, and the dead children are using Dylan as motivation for Zach as well.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to question, like, did they always want to use Dylan, or were they hoping to use Zach at first?
Yeah, because the thing is, they got really close to showing Dylan all the films.
Yeah.
So I feel like they wouldn't go through the effort in saying that.
True.
So, I don't know. I feel like they probably were just trying to use Dylan, but ended up switching to Zach as a failsafe.
Yeah.
Why'd you have to pick him? Because you're not good enough to be one of us. You're not smart enough to do what he can do.
I'm better than him.
Moving on to the next rule is whenever the dad is mentioned, you take a sip. And that came to a total of 8 in this instance.
Yeah, and he's super controlling. His name's Clint, I guess, in the movie. We'll clarify.
Yeah.
But I don't know why he wants his kids back, because it seems like all he does is just abuse them.
What? Are you gonna hit me now? Like Dad?
However, at the end of the movie, he does end up getting his comeuppance, so that's another thing. Furthermore, I wonder if this was intentional or not, but if you combine the L and the I, it spells a different word. No idea if it's an intentional thing in his name, but there could be some speculation if you just want to combine those two words together, see what you get.
So let's move on to rule number 9. It's whenever Deputy So-and-so has an awkward interaction, and this happens 7 times in the movie.
This is definitely not as noticeable as it is in the first movie, obviously.
Yeah, the first one's very prevalent.
The first one's very prevalent. But in this movie, he seems to know a lot more about what he's talking about.
Yeah.
You can still definitely see how awkward he is with people, though.
Yeah, and that's just him as a character, and how he is, how his personality is. So it is still prevalent, it's just not as much as the first.
Mm-hmm. And let's move on to the final rule that we have today, which is whenever you see the dead kids, you take a sip. And this came to a total of 11 sips.
Yeah, and the only thing we really know is that they're controlled by Bagul, but we don't know to what extent. We don't know what capacity they're actually controlled.
Yeah, it's weird because they have a conscience that you see. They talk about their past life a little bit, or at least their tapes.
Yeah.
But it seems like they have some sort of control, though, right?
Well, it seems that way, but again, you don't really know. You don't really get to learn exactly how controlling, or how controlled they are from Bagul. I don't know, you never really learn.
And that's the other thing. They're just oh, he's gonna be angry, he's gonna be upset. And the kids look worried in some scenes, which is I thought you had control of them, you don't have, I don't know. It's confusing. They have a real abusive relationship with Bagul, from what I find, considering considering they're child napped.
Child napped, yeah.
It has to be tonight. If we don't do this tonight, then...
Then what? He'll get real mad at us. You don't want to make him mad.
Please don't. This one's mine. I made it.
So that wraps up all the rules for this drinking game. The total number of sips that it gave us was 111, which is the equivalent to drinking about 3.5 standard 12-ounce cans based on our 30 sip per can scale.
So drinking to the movie, obviously the most notable thing is deaths,
By
keeping
far.
this very relevant.
Yeah.
You saw snuff films, but deaths were pretty much 3 to 5 in any scene with those.
Yeah, everything else was kind of low or, average, middle of the road in terms of numbers.
Even scream cries and yells was fairly low.
That was low for our typically what we see is, high teens, lower 20s at least.
Yeah.
But this one was only 13, so it wasn't that high.
Mm-hmm. Back on to the movie, I'd say, this is definitely a fall from grace from the first Sinister movie. I'm kind of a fan of the backstory because that's the only direction you can really go, is just to figure out the children's motivations in it.
Yeah.
And as we said, with Bagul, he either takes the children and manipulates them, but kind of doesn't. I don't know. They still have a conscience. So it's a little bit up in the air still.
Yeah, there's some confusing parts to it, I guess, which hinders it a bit in comparison to the first one.
Yeah.
And even with the Super 8 reels, in this one you see the kids scenario playing out, and they kind of explain exactly what's going on and what's happening. Whereas in the first one, Ellison is watching them kind of for his work, and he's just stuck there watching these snuff films, and he has to try and figure it out on his own. And it's more of a mystery in the first one, whereas, like we mentioned before, this just explains everything, and that's exactly how it is with these Super 8 reels.
Yeah, it feels like in the last one, I guess Sinister, the first movie, he has to watch them, or needs to watch them. Where in the second one, it feels like you should watch them, Zach. Otherwise, we might kill your family. I don't know. It feels like a lot more forced. Where this one, it feels like Ellison doesn't want to watch them, but has to watch them to be famous.
In the first one.
The first one, yeah. Sorry.
Are you having the dreams?
We all had the dreams.
The movies make the dreams go away.
Once you watch them all, you never have a bad dream again.
For real?
Swear.
Something I liked about this movie, which we got to see more of the deputy, and kind of, he was more front and center, and he's not a typical protagonist that you see in a movie. You know,
Yeah.
he's nervous, you know, he's bad with his words, awkward, all that kind of stuff, and he's not this typical strongman that you see as a horror protagonist.
Yeah, especially for men. You kind of see them as the person like Ash from Evil Dead. You see him trying to be badass, kill these aliens or whatever the hell they are, deadites.
Deadites, yeah.
And this movie, you just get like some awkward, wimpy guy who's just like trying to be tough, and then the next minute when everybody leaves, he's like, oh, and just like inhales so big, then exhales, turns into like a tiny little man. But yeah, he's trying to take on a monster that's in some instances pretty much inevitable.
Oh yeah, and like there's not a lot he can do to face off against Bagul, really.
More so about Deputy, he had some good bonding scenes with Dylan in the movie.
Yeah.
You didn't really see that a whole lot in the first movie, so it gets an extra point for that. You did get to see the adults try to connect with the kids a little bit more.
Yeah, well, and it seems like Deputy was trying to kind of act as a father figure towards him, because he didn't really have a solid father figure in his life, so it seemed like the Deputy was almost trying to fill that void. And one last thing I want to say about the movie is the kid interactions felt a little bit weird. Like, it felt like they were trying to lure a child in, like lure him in, and they threatened to kill his family if he tells anybody. I don't know, it just it felt weird. It didn't feel genuine.
Yeah, the thing is, we're like, we'll kill your family. Like, he's gonna kill them if he does exactly what they say. So it's like the family's gonna die one way or another, I
Exactly.
guess.
It's just like it's going against itself. There's no way for him to win. It's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, and they're always just like, oh, come on, just come into our basement, watch one more, little Dylan.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a little bit off-putting for sure.
So now that we got all that out of the way, what was your overall thoughts on the movie?
For the most part, I didn't mind it. I know a good chunk of the audience kind of thought the other way, but I think it's decent, but definitely not as good as the first one.
No.
They didn't need to make a sequel, and I think they knew that, but because I'm assuming the first one was so successful, they were just like, yeah, we can make another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Where in some instances, like the movie Get Out, I know they were asking if Jordan Peele wanted to direct a second one like right away, and he's like, I mean, if it works in the story, like in the storyline towards it, but I guess it really didn't, so
yes.
He didn't have like a good idea of what to do for a second one. So he was like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Instead, he did Us, which is also a very good film.
Yeah. Well, and I do agree with you. They shouldn't have made a second one for Sinister. Like after Sinister, it should have just been a standalone film. And I don't know, this movie, it just felt awkward at times. Like we talked about how, you know, the kids just going against themselves, like basically giving Dylan no out, successful out at least. And I don't know, it felt silly at times, and I don't know. It was good. I do at least recommend seeing it and, you know, watching it alongside the first one. It's a good time to do the first and second as a double feature if you're playing the drinking games with friends and stuff even. And I do recommend doing that, but I don't know. I don't care to rewatch it much, to be honest. Whereas the first one, I love rewatching it.
Yeah. Acting for the most part in both movies were good, I'll say that.
Yeah,
you couldn't really go wrong. Obviously, Allison's probably the best actor in the two movies, but I still like Deputy a lot as well.
Oh yeah, he's good in his role for sure.
But I don't really want to take away from the second one, because the second one, that's acting's really good. But I liked, obviously, the Oswalt family, like the mother, the father, they were both really good.
Oh yeah.
Well, now that we got our discussion out of the way, let's move on to the award ceremony, where we award one not-so-lucky nominee the Darwin Award. This award goes out to a character who made a stupid decision that resulted in them getting killed, somebody else getting killed, or simply resulting in something bad happening that could have been easily avoided. This award can also be given to a character that is just plain dumb. Here are the nominees.
Today's first nominee is Dr. Stromberg for directly showing Deputy the radio which gets him trapped in the cycle of Bagul at the end of the movie.
Next is Clint for forcing his family to come live with him so he can abuse them further. If Bagul didn't kill him, who knows what he may have done to the family.
The last nominee is Zach for not killing the entire family at the same time as opposed to just Clint first, giving Deputy enough time to save Courtney and Dylan, causing his own death.
And the winner is Zach for being a bad film director, considering he could have killed everybody at once. Also, if he was doing a crucifixion, why wouldn't he just nail their hands and feet into the cross instead of lazily tying them up?
And with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our look into Sinister 2. If you end up playing the drinking game alongside the movie, or if you have any other feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know in the comments if you like the idea of giving the children more backstory in this movie.
Also, keep your eyes peeled as we're going to be doing a live stream based on all the tapes that are in the Sinister franchise. Furthermore, we're going to be making a drinking game for the Black Phone released in theaters today, so keep your eyes out for that as well. If you want to check out our extremely outdated Sinister drinking game and movie review, click on the box on the top right. Or if you want to see a playlist of all the drinking games and movies we review, click on the box below it. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying
Cheers to fears.